Imagine a hidden valley where dragons have not bowed to a human in over 1,000 years. Until one ordinary single father, a school janitor, stepped into their world with his daughter, and everything changed. What happened next would rewrite legends and test the meaning of respect, courage, and love. If you're new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Now, let's jump into the story. A morning light stretched across the empty halls of Cedar Ridge Middle School. The sound of a mop gliding across tile echoed softly as Josiah Hale worked with practiced rhythm. For 15 years, he had cleaned these halls, patched broken pipes, and fixed leaky ceilings. His hands were rough from years of work, but his movements were steady and sure. Outside the tall windows, mountains stood against the sky like ancient guardians. The townspeople called them the Ember Vale Peaks. They were steep, shadowed, and filled with stories passed down from grandparents to children. Legend said that dragons once lived there. They had not bowed to a human in 1,000 years. Most called it myth, yet everyone repeated the same warnings. Never enter the valley at night. Never carry weapons. Never make demands. Josiah glanced at his watch. It was 6:45 in the morning. Soon, he would head home to wake his daughter Lena for school. Lena was 12 years old, sharp-eyed, and full of questions. Their mornings together had become the center of his life after the loss of his wife Nora. Those quiet breakfasts before school gave them strength to face the day. As Josiah worked, Meera Patel, the science teacher, came around the corner carrying a box of lab equipment. She smiled warmly. "You're here early again, Josiah," she said. He returned the smile with tired eyes. "Same as always. Storm drain in the back lot was clogged. Couldn't leave it for later." Meera's tone grew cautious. "Have you heard about the new lighting project? They're placing lamps near the edge of Ember Vale. Some folks think it might stir up old fears." Josiah shrugged, though he felt a small chill. "People talk. Legends don't break pipes or clog drains. I'll leave the stories to others." Meera hesitated. "And your trip with Lena? You're still going camping there during break?" Josiah paused. He had promised Lena they would go. More than that, he had promised Nora he would never let their daughter grow up without wonder. "Yes," he said firmly, "Lena has been dreaming of this trip. She wants to see the valley with her own eyes. I won't take that from her." Meera lowered her voice. "Just remember the rules, Josiah. Whether you believe them or not, remember them." He nodded. "Always." Later that morning, Josiah returned home. Their small kitchen smelled faintly of toast. Lena sat at the table, her dark hair tied back, a sketchbook open in front of her. She wore mismatched socks and grinned as she waved him over. "Dad, I already packed part of our camping gear," she said proudly. "I made a list too. Tent, sleeping bags, food, sketchbooks, and extra pencils." Josiah laughed softly, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You've thought of everything, but we still have 2 days before we leave." Lena's eyes shone. "I can't wait! Do you think we'll see one? A dragon?" He sat down, biting into a piece of toast she had made. "Probably not. People say they're just stories." Her smile faded a little. "But Mom said they were real. She told me her grandmother saw one once." Josiah looked at her, remembering the stories Nora used to tell. She believed the Vale was alive with secrets. Her family had spoken of dragons, with details too sharp to dismiss entirely. He sighed gently. "Your mom believed in many things. She saw magic where others saw nothing. That's what made her special." Lena nodded slowly, then smiled again. "She said you were special too. She said you could fix anything." Josiah chuckled, though his chest tightened. "I just know which end of the wrench to hold, that's all." For the next 2 days, they prepared with care. Josiah checked their supplies: ropes, a first aid kit, food for 3 days, and a small radio. Lena packed her sketchbooks and colored pencils. The house filled with quiet excitement, as if the air itself knew a journey was coming. On the morning of departure, they stopped at the ranger station to confirm the weather. Ivo Sanchez, the older trail guide, studied their map. His hair was silver and his eyes serious. "Spring melt is heavy this year," he warned. "The river in Embervale looks calm, but it pulls hard. Be cautious and remember the rules. People call them stories, but stories grow from something real." Josiah promised they would be careful. The drive to the trailhead wound through narrow roads lined with pines. Sunlight filtered through the trees, painting moving patterns on the car's hood. Lena leaned forward, staring at the peaks in the distance. "Dad," she whispered, "do you feel it? It's so quiet." Josiah listened. She was right. No birds sang. No insects hummed. It was not an empty silence. It was a waiting silence. When they reached the ridge, Ember Vale spread before them. Below lay a vast green valley, cut by a silver river that shimmered in the sun. Caves dotted the far cliffs, dark and watchful. Lena's eyes widened. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Josiah nodded, though unease stirred in him. "We'll camp here tonight. Tomorrow we'll go down." As they set up their tent, the shadows of evening stretched across the valley. Josiah could not shake the sense that unseen eyes were already watching. The air carried a weight he could not name, and though he told himself it was only nerves, he could hear Nora's voice in memory, urging him to treat the valley with respect. As night fell, Lena asked for a story. Josiah repeated the old tale of dragons who once bowed to humans they respected. He told her how greed had broken the bond, and how no dragon had bowed since. Lena yawned, curling into her sleeping bag. "I'll be respectful," she whispered as sleep claimed her. Josiah sat awake beside the tent, the valley below, dark and quiet. In the silence, he thought he heard a low, distant sound, too deep to be the wind, too steady to be imagination. He looked toward the cliffs, but saw only shadow. The rules of Embervale pressed into his thoughts again. Never at night, never with weapons, never with demands. And though he believed himself a man of work, not of legends, he felt the truth of them settle heavy in his chest. The journey had only begun. Morning arrived with a clear sky, and Embervale glowed in soft light. Josiah Hale and his daughter Lena packed their camp quickly. Eager to begin their descent into the valley, their tent was folded, their packs tightened, and their hearts full of both excitement and unease. The path before them wound steeply downward, and every step seemed to take them deeper into a story older than memory. The trail was narrow, covered with loose stones that clicked under their boots. Lena walked close to her father, clutching her sketchbook under her arm. She looked at the cliffs with wide eyes. The air carried an odd stillness. No birds sang, no insects hummed. It was the kind of silence that felt heavy, as though the land itself was holding its breath. As they reached the valley floor, the silver river shimmered in the sun. Tall trees lined the banks, their roots gripping the earth like anchors. Patches of wildflowers grew in bright clusters, their colors reflected on the moving water. Lena's face lit up. "Dad, it's even more beautiful than I imagined," she whispered. Josiah nodded, but his gaze remained fixed on the river. He remembered Ivo's warning at the ranger station. The current looked calm, but it carried the strength of spring melt. "Stay close to me," he said firmly. They followed the river's edge for some distance, searching for a place to camp. The grass grew thick and soft under their boots, but the uneasy silence never lifted. The longer they walked, the more Josiah felt eyes on them. He turned often, scanning the shadows between trees, but found nothing except shifting light. Lena stopped near the water. "Can I fill my bottle here?" she asked. Her voice carried both eagerness and caution. Josiah studied the spot. The water curved gently, moving over smooth stones. It seemed safe enough. Yes, he agreed, but be careful. Don't lean too far. Lena crouched at the edge, dipping her bottle into the river. Josiah used the moment to scan the distant cliffs. The cave mouths were clear now, dark holes in the rock wall that resembled watching eyes. The silence deepened until even his own breath felt loud. Then came the sound of a splash. Josiah spun around. The space where Lena had crouched was empty. The river churned, spreading ripples outward. "Lena!" His voice cracked, panic rushing into every nerve. He ran to the edge, searching the water. Downstream, he caught a glimpse, her head rising above the surface, her arms flailing against the pull of the current. Without thought, Josiah dove in. The cold struck his body like stone, stealing his breath. The current seized him instantly, dragging him sideways, pulling his legs out from under him. He fought forward, eyes locked on his daughter. "Hold on!" he shouted, though the river swallowed his words. Lena vanished beneath the surface, and terror burned through him. He dove, arms thrashing through the murky water, lungs aching. For a moment, he felt nothing. Then, his fingers brushed fabric. He grabbed and pulled with every ounce of strength. They broke the surface together, both gasping for air. Josiah wrapped his arm around Lena, struggling to keep her head above water. The bank seemed impossibly far. His muscles shook and black spots pressed at the edges of his vision. "Please," he whispered, not to anyone he could see, but to the valley itself, not her. A shadow swept across the river. Josiah looked up, expecting a cloud. Instead, he saw wings. A massive figure moved with precision, its scales flashing emerald and sapphire in the sunlight. It swooped low, talons reaching. For one terrifying instant, Josiah thought it might strike. Instead, the claws closed around them with surprising gentleness. The dragon lifted them from the water, holding them steady as if they were fragile cargo. Water streamed from their clothes and fell back into the river below. The creature rose smoothly, then set them down on the soft grass of the bank. Josiah collapsed to his knees, pulling Lena close. She coughed, spitting river water, then breathed steadily. Her eyes widened, not with fear, but with wonder. "Dad," she whispered, pointing past him. "Look!" "Look." Josiah turned. The dragon stood only a few steps away. It was larger than any story had ever described, its scales glittering in layers of color that shifted with the light. Its wings were folded, but the span of them hinted at incredible power. Golden eyes studied him with calm intelligence. Josiah felt his throat tighten. He rose slowly, shielding Lena with his body. "Thank you," he said. His voice was quiet, but it carried every ounce of sincerity he possessed. The dragon tilted its head, releasing a low sound that rumbled like a deep note in the earth itself. Then it lifted its head higher and let out a call that rolled across the valley. The sound echoed off cliffs and trees, long and melodic. The response came almost instantly. From the dark mouths of caves, shadows moved. Dragons of every size and color emerged. Some soared into the sky, their wings flashing like banners in the sunlight. Others climbed down the cliffs with careful strength. A few moved silently through the river, their scales cutting the water like silver blades. Within minutes, the sky and ground filled with dragons. They formed a circle around the riverbank, eyes fixed on Josiah and Lena. Lena clutched her father's hand. "They're real," she breathed, awe in every word. Then a new dragon appeared. It was larger than all the rest, its scales the deep red of autumn leaves after rain. Its presence alone made the others step aside. It walked forward with measured grace, stopping before Josiah and Lena. The red dragon lowered its head, its eyes dark and ancient. Josiah held his daughter close, his heart racing as the air grew heavy with silence. The river had nearly taken everything. Now it had returned something greater. The valley was awake. The red dragon's eyes held a quiet authority, steady and unblinking. With one sweeping motion of its great wing, it signaled for Josiah Hale and his daughter Lena to follow, the Emerald and Sapphire Doctor. The one that had pulled them from the river stepped closer and guided them toward a rocky path that wound upward along the cliffs. The climb was careful and steep. The red dragon moved ahead, its claws gripping stone as if it had walked this path for centuries. Josiah and Lena followed on a narrow ledge, their boots scraping against the rock wall. The Emerald Sapphire Dragon stayed just behind them, a silent guardian, ensuring they would not fall. Lena's small hand clung to her father's, her sketchbook now tucked deep inside her pack, forgotten in the face of the living story unfolding before them. When they reached the top, a wide ledge opened into a massive cave. Cool air flowed out, carrying the scent of stone and water. Josiah stepped inside first, and the sight made him pause. The chamber was vast, like a natural cathedral. Shafts of light streamed through cracks in the high ceiling, glowing against pools of clear water scattered across the floor. Sand covered the center like a carpet, and above them dragons perched on ledges carved into the stone. Their scales reflected the light in every color, painting the walls in shifting patterns. Silence held, but it was not empty silence. It was the silence of attention. At the center of the chamber stood a raised stone platform. Its surface was polished smooth, covered in intricate carvings. Lena gasped softly. Etched across the rock were scenes of dragons and humans standing together. Josiah and Lena stepped closer. The carvings told a story without words. There were pictures of people and dragons working side by side. Humans shaping tools while dragons lifted heavy beams. Humans planting crops while dragons carried water from distant rivers. The next carving showed tension, larger crowds, and disputes. Over time, the images darkened, humans reaching greedily, taking more than they gave. The final carvings revealed dragons turning away, their heads lifted high, their wings folded in silence. The partnership was gone. On the platform rested a single object. It was a pendant made of dark metal, shaped like a dragon with wings curved inward, forming a circle. It gleamed faintly in the shifting light. The red dragon lowered its head and nudged the pendant forward with a single claw. Then it stilled, waiting. Josiah felt the weight of the moment press against his chest. Lena whispered beside him, "Dad, I think it wants you to pick it up." He stepped forward slowly. The air around the pendant seemed warmer. He reached out and lifted it. At once, heat spread through his palm, not burning, but pulsing with life. His vision blurred, and the cave dissolved into light. Images flooded his mind. He saw Ember Vale alive centuries ago, its fields rich with crops, its rivers full of fish. Humans and dragons shared the valley, their lives interwoven with respect and balance. He saw dragons teaching people to carve stone more precisely, and humans teaching dragons the uses of herbs and healing plants. Then the images shifted. New settlers came, their desires sharper, their demands louder. They took without care, cut down more trees, drained more rivers, and pressed dragons for resources. Trust broke slowly, piece by piece, until only fragments of respect remained. The dragons withdrew, closing themselves in their cliffs. They vowed never again to bow to humankind. The final vision struck hardest. Josiah saw a young woman standing in this very cave, her hair caught by the wind, her eyes steady. She held a pendant like the one in his hand. Beside her stood the same red dragon, its eyes softer than stone. The woman lifted the pendant high and spoke with quiet courage. Josiah recognized her instantly. It was Nora, his late wife. His breath caught. He saw her extend her hands, offering not demands, but understanding. The dragon lowered its head in acknowledgement. The vision faded, leaving Josiah trembling with the echo of her presence. When his sight cleared, he stood once more in the great chamber. Dragons lined the walls, their eyes locked on him. The pendant was still warm in his palm. "You knew her," Josiah whispered, looking at the red dragon. His voice shook. "You knew my wife." The dragon inclined its head slowly, the motion both ancient and certain. Lena stared up at her father. "Mom came here, didn't she?" Josiah nodded, unable to speak for a moment. The truth was clear. Nora had stood where he stood now, and she had built a bridge of respect he was only just beginning to understand. The red dragon lowered its gaze until it was level with Josiah's. There was no sound, yet Josiah felt the question in his chest. Would he continue what Nora had begun? He tightened his fingers around the pendant. He thought of the life he lived, the long hours at the school, the quiet breakfasts with Lena, the constant effort to keep things steady. Respect had guided him through all of it. He raised his chin and whispered, "If you guide me, I will try." A low tone rolled through the chamber, answered by the emerald sapphire dragon, and then by dozens more. The sound filled the cave like the ringing of a bell. The red dragon stepped closer, extending one massive claw. Its palm opened flat and waiting. Lena looked at her father. "Dad, I think it's inviting us." Josiah took her hand. Together, they stepped onto the dragon's palm. The scales beneath them were warm and alive. The dragon drew them in close and lifted them carefully. With a powerful beat of its wings, it carried them upward. Wind roared around them, the valley falling away. Josiah held Lena tight, the pendant pressed against his chest. He knew their lives had already changed. The memory in metal had opened a door, and there was no turning back. The Crimson Dragon carried Josiah Hale and his daughter Lena high into the cliffs of Ember Vale. Its wings moved with a slow, steady rhythm, each beat lifting them higher until the river below looked like a silver thread. Other dragons joined the flight, gliding alongside in a formation that felt like ceremony. The wind pressed against Josiah's face, sharp and cold, but there was no fear. He held Lena close, and in her eyes he saw awe rather than terror. They landed on a wide ledge carved by time, large enough for the Crimson Dragon to set down gently. In front of them stretched the entrance to a great cavern. Inside, the space opened into a sanctuary that glowed with shafts of light streaming from cracks above. The air was cool, filled with the sound of dripping water and the quiet shuffle of wings. Dragons filled the chamber. Some rested along the walls, others perched on high ledges, their scales reflecting light in every shade imaginable. Silence followed Josiah and Lena as the Crimson Dragon placed them at the center of the room. The platform beneath them was smooth stone, covered in carvings that told the story of the valley. Humans and dragons once worked together, then drifted apart when greed and mistrust took hold. The story was carved into the very floor where Josiah and Lena now stood. The Crimson Dragon lowered its massive head. Its eyes, dark and deep, studied Josiah as though searching for something hidden inside him. The pendant in his hand pulsed with warmth, and he felt the weight of the moment pressing on his chest. A smaller dragon with pale blue scales stepped forward. It released a sound that was soft, yet clear, a tone that seemed to fill the air with meaning even without words. Though Josiah could not translate the sound, he understood it. It was welcome, and it was also a request. The Crimson Dragon answered in a voice that rolled through the chamber like thunder softened by distance. Other dragons responded, their tones blending into a chorus. Lena clutched her father's hand. "Dad," she whispered, "they're asking us to choose. They want to know if we'll carry the trust Mom once carried." Josiah felt the truth in her words. He thought of the vision he had seen in the pendant, the memory of Nora standing in this very place, her courage steady as she faced these same dragons. She had offered respect, not control. Now the same choice rested with him. He raised his voice, steady but humble. "We mean no harm. We came only to see, to learn, and to honor the valley. If you guide us, we will carry this trust forward." The Crimson Dragon studied him a moment longer. Then, in a slow, deliberate motion, it lowered its head. The gesture was unmistakable. The dragon bowed. A wave of sound filled the cavern as the other dragons followed. One after another, they lowered their heads, scales catching the light, wings folding in unity. The bow was not a sign of defeat, but of recognition, a gesture of respect offered to a man who had come with nothing but honesty and care. Lena's voice trembled with wonder. "Dad, they're bowing to you." Josiah shook his head softly. "Not to me, to what we stand for, to respect, to trust, to keeping promises." He bowed in return, his motion small but full of meaning. Lena did the same, and the chamber grew still again. The Crimson Dragon extended one clawed foot, palm open. Josiah looked at Lena. "It's an invitation," he said. Together, they stepped onto the dragon's palm. The dragon lifted them carefully and walked deeper into the cavern. There, in a smaller chamber, they found baskets woven from reeds, filled not with treasure, but with seeds, tools, and carved tablets marked with diagrams. It was knowledge, preserved across centuries. Wisdom passed down, like a gift waiting to be shared. Josiah touched one of the tablets. It showed terraces built into hillsides. Ways to guide water. Ways to protect soil. He realized then that the dragons had not guarded gold, but had guarded life itself. He turned to the Crimson Dragon and spoke, "We will keep this safe. We will teach others to honor the valley, to remember the old rules. We will carry the vow, as Nora once did." The dragon's deep eyes softened, and it released a sound that carried both relief and approval. Soon, they were carried back to the ledge. The dragons circled above, their wings glinting in the fading light. The Crimson Dragon lowered Josiah and Lena gently to the ground. As father and daughter stood together, the pendant warm against Josiah's chest, Lena whispered, "We came here to see dragons. Instead, we found a promise." Josiah nodded, his voice quiet, "And we'll keep it." Hand in hand, they began the walk back toward the trail. The valley spread behind them, alive with a silence that was no longer heavy, but full of hope. The dragons had bowed after 1,000 pikes, and in return, a father and daughter carried a vow that would outlast them both.